Surrealism and Merritt Oppenheim. Surrealism officially started in 1924. It was meant to unlock the creative potential of the unconscious mind. The Surrealists believed that rationality repressed the power of the imagination, and they thought that the spirit and mind was able to reveal contradictions in everyday life. That part was influenced by Karl Marx. Revelations could come from anywhere. Everyday life, the street, nothing in particular. Surrealism would also help shape later movements, and the style is still influential. The imagery of Surrealism is the most recognizable part of the movement, but it is the most difficult to categorize because each artist had their own images in their unconscious mind. So while there are some base images that recur throughout the Surrealist movement, there are other images that certain artists will use to describe their own emotions, their own unconscious mind. So it was all meant to be weird and confusing. There's nothing very structured about Surrealism. And nature is the most frequent imagery in Surrealism, such as in African Sonata. Surrealisme was coined in 1917 in relation to the ballet parade. The meaning was vague, understanding the form to exceed realistic, and involved a strong element of surprise. The movement grew out of Dadaism, and it actually began as a literary group strongly allied with Dadaism. In the corner there's an example of Dadaism art. It was usually assemblage or collages and such. And then you have an example of early Surrealist art. But artistic influences came from many different sources. Andre Breton officially began the movement in 1924 when he wrote the Surrealist Manifesto, and is actually called the Pope of Surrealism. The Bureau of Surrealist Research was also established in Paris in 1924. It was a group of artists and writers who met and conducted interviews to gather information related to forms that might express the unconscious activity of the mind, and this was also headed by Breton. The original Paris artists used Surrealist art as a reprieve from the violent political situations and to address the unease of the world uncertainties. The movement actually originated between the two world wars and was a way to help people reprieve themselves from this violence and imbalance in the world. Just like in Paris, Surrealism also had a Freudian influence, which often cast women as lesser, so female surrealists that did work even in the shadow of the men who depicted women as muses or disoriented bodies, would experiment with cross-dressing and depicted themselves as animals or mythical creatures. Merritt Oppenheim was a Swiss painter and sculptor. She was born in Germany on October 6, 1913, which was 11 years before the Surrealist movement officially began. She created her first Surrealist work after seeing an exhibition of Bauhaus work, including Paul Klee, and they were a series of pen and ink drawings in a school notebook of hers. She exhibited with Surrealists in the Salon des Surindependents in 1933, participated in Surrealist meetings and exhibitions in 1937, and more sporadically after World War II. Participation ended shortly before Breton died in 1966. Pictured is one of her most famous pieces called Object, which was created in 1936 after a conversation with Picasso and his then lady, Dora Maar, in a cafe. She was wearing a fur bracelet, Merritt was, and Picasso mentioned being able to cover just about anything in fur, and Merritt quickly replied, even this cup and saucer. So, after Breton had asked her if she could make something for the first Surrealist exhibition devoted to objects, she created this fur teacup. Which brings about the question, what makes it a Surrealist piece? It's the juxtaposition. The fur does not truly belong on the cup in reality, but was placed there as if it was always supposed to be there. It's a play on erotic possibilities of supping and sipping and sexualizing, because she took the items traditionally associated with feminine decorum and then made them into tableware poking at sexual play. Another piece that she did was Stone Woman in 1938. It is a bunch of stones that descend into the water and creates the shape of a woman. The composition is full of contrasts such as solid and liquid, hard and soft, animal and mineral. She was going through a major depressive time, which caused her paralysis in all aspects of her life. So the stones basically act as her depression, weighing her down and slowly killing her. But the feet remain the part that keeps her grounded, because she later wrote that the only real positive thing is the feet, which represent a connection to the unconscious. There is no way to tell the scale of the image accurately, so that part is up to interpretation. Pair of gloves was one of the last pieces Merritt ever made. It came well after the official movement ended in the 60s. She worked from sketches that she made in the 30s, however, so she had screen printed red veins onto goat suede gloves. Merritt had an interest in the hands and gloves motifs of surrealism, and this being surrealism was meant to glove your hand, and gloves were items of civilization among fashionable women, so she wanted to take something that was generally meant to hide our true animal form and turn it inside out and turn it in on itself, making the invisible visible. Being that they were made in the last year of her life, they also suggest vulnerability of old age and life fragility. Significant artists, you have Merritt Oppenheim, and other such artists include, but are not limited to, Max Ernst, Salvador Dali, Joan Miro, Rene Magritte, Dora Maar, and Claude Kahn. The influences of surrealism are very present in abstract expressionism, because they incorporated the ideas of surrealism into their work, but then pioneered new techniques for representing the unconscious. New York was the center of this new movement, whereas Paris was the center of the surrealist movement, and it favored tapping the unconscious through abstraction rather than through the dreams. Some surrealist-influenced artists include Rothko, Gottlieb, Hoffman, Still, and Pollock. And this was one of the surrealist-influenced pieces that Pollock made. Surrealism introduced chance elements into art, and that was used in the unscripted happenings of the 50s, and is even in computer art based on randomization. And then if you look at art today, there's a lot of random things happening in some pieces. So these are surrealist-inspired pieces usually. But surrealism continues to inspire and influence a lot of artists and art movements in today's world and contemporary. And then those are my works cited.